elle est en place. C'est la poudre.
Tiens, on a découpé une femme en morceaux rue de la bienséance à 2 pas du chat. Tiens, on a découpé une
I am a feminist.
Je vous obsède avec une constance
Je ne me suis pas conduite
qui appelle quand même l'admiration.
d'une façon conforme à ce qu'on attend d'une jeune fille d'abord et d'une femme ensuite.
I'm sorry that I didn't become the world's first black classic pianist.
Des femmes artistes, activistes, inspirantes, politiques, des femmes puissantes.
Je crois qu'une femme qui existe dans son temps, à l'intérieur de son temps, n'a pas d'époque, elle
Bienvenue
marque son époque.
dans la
Boum.
poudre. I am Lauren Bastide, and today my guest is Maggie Nelson.
You know, I was reading something the other day where somebody said, you know, there aren't moods in menopause. There's one mood. It's called rage.
It's funny, these past few days, bluets have appeared among poppies and dandelions in the small meadow near the river. I gathered them and put them to dry between pages 58 and 59. In the river, a lapis lazuli sparkle catches my eye in the water. My hand dives in. I take the object. It's a piece of mosaic, maybe a swimming pool tile. As blue as the river, as blue as bluets, as blue as a bruise on my thigh, as my soul on summer evening, as my pen's ink on my notebook. With Maggie Nelson, we talked about Judith Butler, violence, and love. So are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, Maggie Nelson, you're a writer. You're also a literature teacher at University of Southern California, and it's a big honor to meet you today. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. It's so fun.
I read Bluets this weekend by a river. And there are so many mentions of rivers in this book, it felt a bit weird. It's a book about being in love with blue, the color blue. And you say you started by not writing this book, but by telling people you were writing a book about blue. And so people became your blue ambassadors and told you stories about blue and bring you blue objects, introduce you to blue people. And when I was reading, I had 2 blue things inside and I wanted to offer them to you.
Fantastic.
So they're in this little box.
Should I open it now?
Yes, please.
Oh, great. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And the box is a very beautiful, very dark blue as well. Oh, look.
It's just things I
Fantastic.
found by the
Amazing.
river. This little stone was inside the water.
This is a bluet, right? No.
Yes, it is one.
It is.
Yeah.
The real deal. Amazing. Oh, so cool. And you found this by the river, just in the
It was in
wild?
the water.
Oh,
it was
my
shining blue like
gosh.
that. Do you imagine how
So
intense
special.
it was?
Thank you so much. I'll treasure these.
You probably
I
have
love
thousands
them.
of those.
I do not. And also my blue altar has long ago been dismantled, so these make me want to start a new one, a new blue altar.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's so sweet.
So Bluets has just been translated to French. You actually wrote it 10 years ago, way before the Argonauts. It's another moment of your life. You were brokenhearted. You were working as a waitress. It's like a recording of what you went through at that time. You even reckon you might have written this book half drunk. When you promote this book today, being the now acclaimed writer of the Argonauts, being a wife, being a mother, how do you feel about this recording of your depression?
It feels like me. It's the same person, you know. I mean, I think that I don't really think of the books as they're autobiographical, but they're not meant to chronologically stack on each other to explain a life or something. They're more aesthetic. They're more stylized objects or something than that, you know. So I think it feels familiar and fine, you know. I mean, I feel like I can tell that was a very different moment in my life. I rarely feel lonely in the same way now, but I feel, I feel kinship with that person.
It's not hard to go back on these hard moments. You see the objects of art and not what it was like.
No. I mean, in some ways, I have other books that are harder to go back to, you know.
I imagine.
So, I mean, you have here The Red Parts or something like that. That was a little more, it wasn't harder, but, depression or melancholy or the blues or whatever, they're always with us. in a way that being like very enmeshed in like a murder case or something is not, so I don't feel, I still get depressed.
Yeah, and it's also like a soft and luminous book. Okay, so I'm in love with your brain.
Oh, fantastic.
Can you please be God?
Yeah.
That would really be amazing. You know what I think you are, and I hope you don't misunderstand it.
Okay, good.
I think you're a perfect and absolutely not binary opposite of Judith Butler. I have to make a confession. I've never managed to finish Gender Trouble. It's so hard to read.
Yes.
You impacted theory with the same time of explosive thought as Butler, but with this very fluid, oceanic, precise writing. It just flows like a river. Do you take my compliment?
I do take it. I mean, I don't take it in opposition to Butler's writing because I think Butler's just doing something very, very different,
Yes, of course.
So I'm working in a totally different genre with totally different. But I definitely take your oceanic compliment, so that's very kind.
But I think that you're often compared to her because the Argonauts can be compared to Gender Trouble in terms of impact, in terms of also help it might have bring to the queer community around the world and giving like concepts and you're often compared to her, and you read her when you were really young, right?
I did, yeah, and I know her now. Yeah, I mean she's amazing, and I mean I think that there's both. I mean, she's a very interesting figure because there's her work, which is one thing, and like you say, it's and then there's kind of what's been extrapolated from her, like what's known of her, like her name is a stand-in for all kinds of things. So, and I think that she's done such diverse work about so many different subjects and things, and it's always. I mean, I really like very difficult work because. You might feel stupid the first time you read it, and then you live like 5 more years of life, and you read a few more books, and you go back to it, and you're like, oh, I think I get this now. Then you take 5 more years, and you learn a little more about life, and you go back to it, and then each time you get something different. But her book Precarious Life, which I don't know if it's been translated into the French, is written in a much simpler idiom than a lot of her other books, and it was very important to me in writing. The Red Parts, for example, which is her writing on violence and mourning.
Okay, I will check it out.
It's very good, yeah. It's very good.
Thank you for this advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so in La Poudre, Maggie, we tried to understand how women who make the 21st century were built. So we're going to rewind a little, if it's okay with you. You were born in the Bay Area near San Francisco. What was it like to grow up in the Bay Area?
Well, gosh, you grew up somewhere you don't have anything to compare it to. But I think... It was funny, I was doing an interview earlier today, and he kept asking me what it was like to grow up as a young girl, and I was like, I don't know what to compare that to, but I think he was trying to get me to say it was hard, or it was misogynist, or I don't know, like life. It wasn't. I mean, I feel like I had despite some familial traumas, I loved San Francisco. I had a lot of great literature and great friends. Some of my friends from that time have remained dear friends of mine, are very bold and talented people. There was a singer named Lhasa de Sela who I thank in the back of the Argonauts, but she was a good friend of mine who died very tragically at 37 from breast cancer, but she became a kind of international singing star and was just totally amazing. And she was one of my best friends in high school. So there were all kinds of great people around, and we hung out a lot in the Haight-Ashbury, which is where my high school was, and it was weird because it was. This kind of maybe relates to like the seeds of what I've been writing about lately, but it was odd to be in the epicenter of hippie life.
Yes.
In the 80s, when things had really taken a more of a kind of skinhead turn, the hate was it was like the ugly aftermath.
It was like 10 years too late.
Yes. I mean, I don't know if I would have loved the Summer of Love because it's not really my scene, but it was a very, I think it probably set the stage for a kind of long-standing interest I've had in both liberation movements, but also kind of like what happens the day after the revolution, you know.
That's interesting.
And so, yeah, it was good. I mean, although once I went to New York, when I first saw New York in my teens, I definitely decided that was the better city for me, and then kind of couldn't wait to move there. So
before going back to California,
I know that was not foreseeable. That was not the plan. I think I really love New York, and I think I thought I would probably live most of my adult life there, but I didn't end up doing that. So.
Mm-hmm. You were attracted to books really young. You even broke your elbow while trying to catch a book on the shelf when you were 2. What did books bring you that real life didn't?
You know, what's odd about that question is I always feel a little ashamed in that, like, I read as a child, but I wouldn't, you know, most writers say, like, my nose was always in a book. You couldn't get me away from books. Like, it wasn't really my experience. I think also I read a lot, but a lot of the, this is not what you asked, but I'm just saying it anyway. But I think I'm realizing in retrospect that I really always was also, this is not so much anymore because now I'm old and gray, but not gray, but old, but like music, like, you know, whether it was like kind of post-punk music or whatever, and its relation to writing was like for a long time the more interesting to me. And when I moved to New York anyway, a lot of the writing scene that I was involved with, it wasn't like I grew up like with Jane Austen and like, you know, like Victor Hugo. Like it was like I was really interested in kind of a live poetry and music scene more than other things, and yeah.
So literature arrived a bit later in your life.
I guess so. I mean, I read in high school, and I loved poetry, and I loved Paul Celan, and I loved Rimbaud, and I loved Russian novels, and I loved all kinds of things. But I think there's a writer named Eileen Miles do you know Eileen Miles? You should have Eileen come.
Yes, of course. I want to talk about her later because she's really important in your career. And
but I
actually didn't know her before I prepared this interview.
Great.
And
I just like I saw Eileen read when I was about 19, and that's kind of when I thought, oh, you know, and Patti Smith and all that kind of scene in New York. That's kind of more when I thought, oh, those are my people. I got to go find them. So it wasn't really. So there was, again, it was a lot of like, there was literature I loved on the page, but I was also very smitten with literature and performance and people doing live literary events and stuff. Yeah.
So you were a young reader, and you were also an early writer. I read this anecdote that is, I think, mind-blowing. So your dad, which you lost when you were 10, was a liar. A liar.
He was not.
He was not a liar.
He was a fine
Sorry.
Man. No, I'm just kidding.
Is that my mother?
He was a lawyer. Yeah.
He was a lawyer, and he used to give you notepads and pencil, and had you document every detail of what happened during the day at the office. I think it's really interesting because you're still a frantic note taker. I know it's the way you work, like noting down things all the time. Actually, your books are often incredibly intense and structured notes. So why do you think your dad made you do that as a child?
He didn't make me. He just gave me the pen and paper.
So it just came out from you?
Yeah. I think my dad was a great. It's really a shame that he died so young because he was. I think he was really interested in his children and our development, and he was always cutting out articles. Like if I was interested in theater, he would put an article about like Yale Drama School on my bed or something. And what was amazing about that was that, you know, he died when I was 10, so that means he must have been doing that like when I was very young, know, which didn't really, occur to me till now. I have, kids who are that age, and I think I would not be cutting out articles about their future and putting them on their pillows. Like, that's a very weird and ambitious and pushy thing to do. But he was really, but what was so great about it was that he, it wasn't, he was interested in anything I was interested in. So I danced for a while, like I did dance, and I had danced later after he died, but he knew I loved dance companies, and he would take me to dance companies, and he would take me to ballet, and he would leave articles about dance. He got me a subscription to dance magazines, so it didn't have to be like being a lawyer or a doctor or anything I was interested in, he would like. So I think But I think a lot of kids love literature because they love alternate realities. Like they love, oh, I lost myself in a story, or, oh, I would make up these stories about fairies that lived on a planet. You know, I was not that kind of kid, and I'm not that kind of writer. I'm like, the note-taking is more the kind of writer that I am. So I think back when I was younger, it was the same, where I liked re-rendering the world into writing, but I wasn't particularly dreamy, and I wasn't particularly, I was attentive, you know.
Yeah, so it was already an intent to keep reality by the writing, and almost a journalistic approach.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I still have my journal from my dream journal from first grade, where I wrote every dream, you know. So it was very much about like kind of taking notes on life, you know?
And recording.
Recording. Yeah, for sure.
So you give many details about your childhood in one book, especially the red parts, la partie rouge en français, which I don't understand why it's in singular in French.
Yeah, you can explain it to me, because they insisted that the red parts in plural was had some connotations I wouldn't like or something in
Les
French.
parties rouges. Yeah, but it has the same like provocative and a bit like biological and weird.
Well, that was the idea. I don't know. When people translate your titles, they kind of insist to you that you don't understand, but that you wouldn't like the title. And I thought the red parts is a very simple title.
Yeah. Well,
but,
anyway,
putting that aside. Okay. Yeah.
And so, in this book, you talk about your childhood, and you admit yourself you can be pretty harsh with your mom, who is the one who divorced your dad and married the painter when you were 7. What type of mom was she?
She was a great mom. She was a great mom. And she doesn't even want me listening to a French podcast, so I'm not even saying that to please her. I'm just saying it because it was true. I think like most kids, and I think the red parts was the Argonauts a little bit like I teach writing to younger people, and I notice that, like me, everyone has like several books or one book to get out of them where like you blame your parents for everything, you know. I think it's like the kind of natural state till maybe you're like 35 or something, and then maybe something changes or maybe not, you know. So I think I spent a lot of time, because I think she was my only parent. When you have a dead parent, it's very easy to think you split, and you can put all your fantasies about the things that would have been better, would have made you happier had that parent been around, you know. So I think I probably did that for a while, and I'm sure that my mother suffered but what I think in retrospect was really happening was that my sister and me were just mourning our father. We didn't have anything to do with him. And I think my mom in retrospect was very fiercely protective of us, and tried her very best to, be the best mom that she could possibly be. And, I think she was, if you're lucky, if your parents live long enough, and if you live long enough, you get to have like several lives with them, and I feel like we're also in a totally different life now than we ever have been,
But your mom was also, I think, traumatized.
Yeah.
She went through this tragic event that happened 4 years before you were born. Her sister Jane was murdered, and it really determined your career and your life. Your career, because when in 2005 you wrote Jane, A Murder, which is a book in which you bring your deceased aunt back to life, and which also made you bloom as a writer. And also your life, because violence and fear are very present in your childhood. Death is always here.
Yeah. I think my mom was traumatized, and I think I didn't. I think Jane, A Murder, and then the red parts were also my attempts to understand better what her life had been like, both growing up with much, much stricter, much more conservative parents, and she's from Michigan, which is in the middle of the States, and it's a totally different culture than growing up in San Francisco, so growing up in the 50s there was very different, and then the loss of her sister, it's very hard, and my mom was married, as people did then, very young, and so, I think, and then I think even though they weren't married, my father's death was obviously another trauma for her. They had been best friends since they were 15 and had married, had been high school sweethearts and married out of college. And they'd only been divorced for a year when he died, and she found him, So I think that was all incredibly difficult, for
and
her.
also she felt guilty, like many often women feel guilty
exactly.
for anything bad that happens around
Yeah, and if
them.
you feel guilty and then the object of your guilt, i.e. your ex-husband dies and leaves your children fatherless, like your guilt is, incredibly increased, because now you have a trauma of not your causing, but for whom it's kind of all mixed up for your children and how their lives change. So I think that was a lot for her to contend with. And then, as the Red Parts details, my sister was a kind of a hellion growing up, and that was, I think, now that I have one teenage stepson and a slightly younger child along the way, I judged again my mother very harshly,
Yes.
and now I realize that parenting teenagers is especially teenagers acting out is very difficult, especially teenagers in pain. It's just all very, very difficult, and so I don't. It's not that I think every choice she made was perfect, but I really feel for her.
Yes,
looking
of
back
course.
on that time in a way that I was obviously unable to then.
But I also felt for her reading the book, and I was really touched by the way you talked about your mom's trauma with cinema. I have a very similar one because I lived something very similar to what your mom has lived, actually. And of course, many movies at some point have a woman being raped or beaten or shot, and violence against women is everywhere. It's very aestheticized, and it is unbearable when this happens for real. And that's the reason why you ended up writing The Art of Cruelty, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think Jane and The Red Parts and The Art of Cruelty are kind of they kind of go together, in their way.
Yes.
And The Art of Cruelty is about representations of violence and their relationship to reality or lack thereof. Because I'm, for lack of a better word, like a scholar, a critic, as well as, someone who writes autobiographically, it doesn't always make sense for me to treat things just in one, genre, So I think I was... I had probably just from some artistic interest in transgression, and then also just from a life of being, repelled and interested by representations of violence. That book is kind of a collection of many years of watching different things, and then also why people watch, because like my mom, I think if you're contending with trauma of that nature, or even if you're not, but there can be a kind of attraction, repulsion, where you're like attracted to dark things because you're working something out, and then of course they might affect you way more intensely. Like my partner is always saying to me, because I'm very affected by things I watch, and he's always saying to me, "It is just a movie. Like, what on God's earth?" And I say, well, people don't make movies to not affect people. They make them because they have an effect on people. Like, if they didn't, then why bother? So I feel like we're both right, in a way. Like, he's right that it's just a movie, and I'm also right that when you watch, I can't remember the name, and I certainly don't know the name in French, but when people watch, say, like a dance performance, there's like I think they call it kinesthetic empathy, where like their body feels a little bit like it's moving, and violence is the same. I mean, it's all the same. Like you are having excitations in your body that mirror what you're watching on the screen. So I think that's very interesting.
And what I also love about you and about the succession of books you wrote is actually they kind of write themselves or impose themselves to you. Like you wrote Jane a Murder in an attempt to be brave enough to front this violence and talk about it freely. And then the Red Parts happened because suddenly the case was reopened about Jane's death, and there was a trial, so you had to document it. And then you had to write The Art of Cruelty to turn this into theory. It's really like passionate to see the way you...
Yeah, I know. It's nice when a book only discharges once. That was a weird topic that needed to like discharge over and over again. I know, it was really like a long time of working on that material, and I mean, I may work on something like that again. I don't know, but for the moment, it was kind of a great relief when that kind of decade of topics kind of closed a little bit, you know. But clearly I had a lot to get out, and I think it was, I mean, women everywhere, even in the most permissive, supportive cultures, you know, the bolder or more outspoken you become. I mean, look at like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or anybody, like, you know, the more you become, the more you do become a target in different ways and different things. And so I think in a weird way, of course, it makes sense that Jane's story would have been one that to like become a writer, I would need to face down, because like your worst fear is that someone will gun you down for your boldness, and that's what I thought had happened in my own family, you know. So it was very anxiety producing, and I think, and again, like my circumstances were not ones that, I mean, many people and many women, as we both know, live in much more oppressive circumstances than we are here in this studio in Paris. And have a lot more to be afraid of. But I think in my miniature way, you know, that was like my own hurdle to get over, you know.
But I also love the way you transformed this very, like, almost decade-long thinking about violence into a very feminist revendication. Actually, in The Art of Cruelty, you reclaim violence for women. There is an interview you gave about this book in which you say, men don't own darkness. They don't own aggression. They don't own destruction or self-destruction. It's hard, I think, for women to know what share of that darkness is ours, because we too are human animals. And what share is the result of having to live in a world sick unto death with the destructive forces of misogyny and male aggression. And it says,
that was with Bjork, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
in this letter,
a good person to talk to about all this stuff, right?
It was incredible,
Yeah.
this exchange of emails with Bjork, amazing. And typically this Lars von Trier movie, Dancer in the Dark, I couldn't stand it. I left after half an hour. I was like, this
well, what
is
was
too much.
so amazing about, I mean, that interview was like, I don't know, it was like one of those strange moments of like your whole life coming into focus where, you know, she had been, ever since I was, you know, really young, 12, 13, because, you know, she's just a few years, but when, you know, when I'm 13 and she's 19, that's like, she's dancing around on MTV in the sugar cubes, and I'm, you know, just getting my first period or something. So like, but I feel like, but then watching, you know, I'd written in, I think, almost 2 books about Dancer in the Dark. I mean, I'd been in Lars von Trier, and I certainly wrote about The Art of Cruelty, and in the red parts, I write about Dancer in the Dark. And so, you know, and I think it was seeing this female idol be kind of, you know, sacrificed or like killed in this way that was like unbearable for me. So to be able to actually, you know, years later talk to the actual person about the whole thing was very, I don't know what the word is, very like healing in some way, you know, and to talk about that. Yeah, but yeah, I do think what I said is true. And I think that this, you know, we're never going to be able to figure out like what share is ours and what share is misogyny, you know, but I do pretty firmly believe that like for women to be treated as the human animals that we are, that we can't, you know, that we can, but I don't know that it's eventually all that serviceable to imagine ourselves as these pure, caring, pristine, maternal beings who will make, you know, beautiful matriarchies where we all just, you know, put on flower wreaths all day. I mean, we may do that. I'm not saying we wouldn't. We might. But I feel like right now, where we live and in what we do, I also think it's it can be important to not pass off our feelings on to other people and to look more squarely at them within ourselves, because eventually, you know, it's nice to say, oh, I think this came from there, but, you know, I think it's also like, it doesn't, I mean, men were given a lot by misogyny and patriarchy too, that they also need to figure out what to do with, you know, we all need to figure out what to do with it. So, and I do think that having a full range of human emotions is, you know, I mean, you talk to anybody, say like in menopause or something, and say like in menopause or something, and you know, rage is like I was reading something the other day where somebody said, there aren't moods in menopause. There's one mood. It's called rage. It's constant,
Yes.
But I was just thinking, there are all these states, even hormonal states, that, it would be very silly for us to pretend as though they aren't real things.
Yeah, I really like this feminist gesture of reclaiming violence, and actually, you also put this brutality and this harshness in your writing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't talk softly about pregnancy in the Argonauts. You don't talk softly about depression in the bluets. And there is a passage I really wanted to read, if it's okay.
Yeah.
So it's number 134. It counts me to think of blue as the color of death. I have long imagined death's approach as the swell of a wave, a towering wall of blue. You will drown, the word tells me, as always told me. You will descend into a blue underworld, blue with hungry ghosts, Krishna blue, the blue faces of the ones you loved. They all drown too. To take a breath of water, does the thought panic or excite you? If you're in love with red, then you slit or shoot. If you're in love with blue, you fill your pouch with stones good for sucking and head down to the river. Any river will do. I'm having so many shivers by reading it. Can you see this? It's very, it's a very intense and strong way of talking about suicide and suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, I think, in my writing, whether it's pregnancy or anything, I don't aim to write in a kind of shock jock, brutal way about anything. I try and be very clear and be as clear about the thoughts I'm having as, I try and just make it true. I don't strive for effect or strive to make it more, more anything than it is. If I'm writing about what did that placenta look like? I'm really thinking what did it look like? I'm thinking, it looked kind of like a steak is the only thing I can think. I'm just trying to think, what are these things? So I think in that way, but the culture will tell you, you learn a lot about the culture when it tells you, oh, this seems really harsh. You think, why? It's not harsh.
Yeah.
It's just this is just accurate, striving for accuracy, in a certain way. But yeah, I think that in bluets, I was also trying to, bluet in French, I think I was trying to, John Keats, the English poet, has a famous line, half in love with an easeful death. And I think that there's a kind of, it's horrible, but there's obviously a kind of intoxication with one's own despair that can accompany depression, And I think in that passage, I'm mentioning, when I hear you read it, I can hear in it, one of the problems with suicide is that, people talk about a lot is that it can be kind of contagious, And in that passage, I can hear, it's Virginia Woolf mostly that I'm writing about and imagining her heading down to the river. But, also I mentioned Paul Celan, and here we are on the banks of, the river that he suicided in, and he was very important to me. And there's Beckett in there because I'm talking about the sucking stones, which is from, I guess, Malloy. Or maybe it's Malone Dies, I can't remember. But, all of these, and Beckett didn't suicide, but the problem with suicide, and of the many problems, but one of them is that people you admire suicide, everyone feels very concerned that they're going to be a rash of suicides because people are I love Virginia Woolf, I love Paul Celan, and how did it end like that? How did it end like this? And then you think, and then of course you begin to think, that's why I think children of suicides have such a difficult time too, because it's a narrative that's been given to you of what might happen with your life. The same way you think, will I go gray prematurely, or will I become a drug addict, or will I suicide? It's just it's very difficult to bear. So I think that book, I was trying to put all of that in there.
You mentioned Virginia Woolf, and I think your mom wrote a thesis about Mrs. Dalloway.
She did.
And in your thesis, you write about another suicidal writer, Sylvia Plath.
Yeah.
Which who I admired so much.
Yeah, I wrote about Plath and Anne Sexton in my undergraduate thesis, both of whom suicided. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Do you remember what were your dreams when you wrote this thesis? How did you see yourself in the future at that time?
Well, I was very young. I think I was 20 when I wrote that thesis. But you know what? I looked at it the other day and I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was actually, all of my interests really were contained, not all of them, many of them were contained in that thesis when I look at it now, because it was an attempt to bring, it was called The Performance of Intimacy, which is after a phrase Anne Sexton called herself in a poem. She said she was a performance artist of intimacy, and I was very interested in instead of this kind of idea of like women like naturally spilling their guts because we can't keep anything in and we're just blah blah about our bodies and blah blah, their poetry, especially if you read Plath, which there's nothing, people call her confessional poet, but it's about the most artifice oriented, it's the most constructed poetry, and it's all very allegorical and draped in Greco-Roman references. It's not, it is so cooked, it is so, but it feels raw. That's what she was famous for, was like, how could this very cooked thing feel so raw, And I think that I was very interested in that kind of performance, which is not like blogging, it's like, how do I write 10 lines of a poem that are so tight that they convey this sense of all this immediacy and intensity, but that may have been chiseled for many, many months, and she worked obsessively with the thesaurus and obsessively with a rhyming dictionary. That was very very laborious process. I think she wrote the Ariel poems a little faster, but yeah, I think that there's a lot there that but I also wrote that thesis. Now we're really getting into the weeds, as we say in English, but it was also about Foucault and about Foucault's ideas about what he called, how do you say in French, aveu, confession?
An aveu, right?
Yeah, and about that, his whole thesis was we've been told that sex has been repressed, but in fact, we've been talking about it endlessly.
Histoire de la sexualité, which is
exactly, and the more we talk about it, the more we kind of create this discourse, and we have this kind of fake idea that it's been repressed as we keep talking about it. So I thought that was an interesting frame also to think about the way we, not that there's a real about sex or the body or something, but that through language we keep inventing it, which is Judith Butler's whole point about gender anyway. So these are kind of long-standing interests of mine. I have other interests as well. But
when you hear the title, The Performance of Intimacy, it could also already be the Argonauts. It's really
right,
there.
Yeah.
The main idea is.
Weirdly, yeah. Weirdly, I don't really. What I was kind of writing about in that book is about how in the 50s and 60s, this is kind of back to where we started in terms of how different things were. I think in some ways there was a lot more performativity around shame because it was so, culture was different. I think now that people are very accustomed to social media or kind of the endless share of one's life on Facebook or something. Now I think I'm probably more interested than ever in, the artistry or what it means to meditate for a long time before something that appears personal, but to me, my work doesn't feel intimate or personal because it's I've worked with the material so long, and you're eventually kind of trying to solve a poetic puzzle or something, and it's not. It's also when you write autobiographically, your books are a snapshot in time, and you're not, as you started saying, you're not where you were when you wrote it. So, even the Argonauts, Harry and I are not,
not there anymore.
No, it's just so much has changed, and
yeah, your kids have grown.
Yes, our kids are totally different creatures with different problems, and so when people say how could you have told us so much about who you are? I think who we are. What do you know about who we are? We're who we are this morning. So, but that's great because it's life should escape art.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I have this weird question: were you born a woman, or did you rather become one?
I don't know that I am one. I don't know what I am. I like what you're. I think strategically, it's important to do things like what you're doing with having like women like only on the show, or do all kinds of things because of the statistics that you say, but I think like for me personally, I spend very little time finishing sentences that begin I am, you know what I mean? Just because like I can't even, I don't even feel like I've become a woman. I just feel like I'm,
Yeah, it's really interesting what you said, because you write a lot about identity, and saying you don't like sentences that start with I am. It tells a lot about how you perceive identity as something that is really constructed. It's always like from the outside, right?
I mean, I think of it as strategic. I mean, I think some people really feel it very fully, and God bless them, like if they feel very fully. But there's a part in the Argonauts where I have a little quote from Winnicott. Actually, he's quoting, I'm trying to remember what it is. It's not Winnicott. It's Lacan. But he says, that a man who thinks he's a king is mad, but a king who thinks he is a king, is no less crazy in a certain way.
Yes.
And like, I think that for me personally, if I were like, I am a woman, I know I'm a woman, I am woman, like I would begin to think I was actually crazy. I mean, I just, it doesn't like make any sense to me to I don't know. I wouldn't know what I was even saying, honestly.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean I strategically identify as female all the time, and that's fine with me too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it also reminds me of the way Monique Wittig, you really very often use in your books, talks about like woman. Woman is like actually something that is defined by men.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, that's a very.
That's why she says les lesbiennes ne sont pas des femmes. Like
exactly,
when you love another woman, you get out of all this process of like domination that women live through their life.
Yeah, I think that you just realize, and I mean, The Argonauts was a really interesting book to publish because it's like this whole long extended argument about fluid identity. And then, people go to review it and they have to choose all these words. And like, especially for my partner, they would choose all these words that none of which he uses. Like they call him a trans man, or, F to M, transsexual. I mean, all these words that are just Harry would never use any of those words at all. Ever.
Harry says he's not going anywhere.
Yes, he doesn't use any of those words. And so like, it was just very interesting to read all these reviews and just kind of feel like, I get it. Like I feel for people. They need to say what they say, and they want to say things right. So they get very, but in reviewing the book, I feel like the book offered a lot of, in the text of the book, it offered a lot of things that you could say.
Yes.
None of which were somehow being said. So that was very interesting to be like, wow, you could even say this really like kind of in bold language, and you still will get back these fixed categories. It's very hard to slip away from.
Yeah. So you learned the art of writing with incredible mentors, Annie Dillard and Ellen Miles, you mentioned earlier. She ran for president in 1991 as the first openly female candidate, which is like really funny.
Yeah, I know.
How important was it to be transmitted through them? I know they transmitted you writing, but I was also wondering if they didn't transmit you a certain vision of what feminism can be.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, the funny thing about Annie and Eileen is that they don't share anything in common about feminism, because Annie Dillard is not a self-identified feminist. She wouldn't like that at all, I don't think. But Annie was, I don't know if you know her work or by reputation, but she's one of the fiercest people, and very, for lack of a better word, very ballsy people. Like she would, she would compare herself to Jesus Christ, and she would say, she was with Thoreau and Emerson, were like the three most important American writers. I mean, this kind of a bravado. And Eileen had a similar bravado. And I guess I learned in part that I never really did this because I don't have a lot of bravado. It's not like it's not really my style. But I learned by watching them that, and Gertrude Stein did this too, and that, asserting that you were a genius goes a long way. Men have known this forever, right? They've known this forever. They do it every day. They're a genius about how to fix their remote control, or a genius about how to whatever, do everything. But they know everything about how to run a country. But just asserting this kind of presence is very powerful. And I think I hadn't, my mother, who's a very strong woman in her own right, but she definitely, if you met her, she would be like a lot of women, more like I am, honestly, maybe incredibly deferential. I'm sorry, I took that. Yes, just the whole thing, and in a way, I feel like I said in the Argonauts, that's great, because the world could use more people saying that they were sorry and to give you some space. And I don't think there's anything wrong. Like, we could use more of that. But when it becomes a habitual way of ceding your place in the world, it can be very dysfunctional and very paralyzing. And, I teach younger women, and I see a lot of them in oral examinations or other things just struggle to really to just bluster their way through, really to just bullshit. Not bullshit, but like just to
fake it till you make it.
Just fake it till you make it. Just just be there, and just be like, I'm not asking for permission. I have a right to be here. I might not know the answer to every question you're asking me, but I'm still here, and we're good, And I think I learned a lot from seeing, Eileen and Annie were like that times 100, and that was very powerful to me.
I also like the way how often in your books you were like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I really like how you admit you don't know some things, and I think you do it in a way that is not like, oh, I'm so sorry, I don't have the answer, but like, I don't know, then so what? How does this prevent me from saying what I'm saying?
Yeah, I really feel like that. It's funny, I was telling someone the other day that one of my professors, one day we were talking about Hegel, I think, and he said, I don't do Hegel. I never did. I just, not a philosopher I know anything about. And I just was I was in graduate school, and I was very stunned. I thought, you can just say you don't do Hegel? Like, I thought you had to fake it till you make it. You pretend you know Hegel, right? Like, and then a friend I was talking to said, was it a man who said that? And I said, well, yes. And she said, well, of course, he didn't have to pretend to know, because he wouldn't lose anything by not knowing. But I wasn't so sure. Like, I think that, Roland Barthes did this a lot. He would say, I don't pretend mastery. I think it should be a unilateral occupation to not know, because the more you learn, the more you know how much you don't know.
Exactly.
And the more, I think, life becomes more humbling, if not humiliating. I'm in France, and this is very typical of people, but you watch a 4-year-old at a restaurant speaking French, and you think, that child knows French, and I don't. Like, I'm so humiliated. It just is you feel so humiliated. Every country you go to, you feel humiliated that you don't understand. Turkey's politics, or who's the prime minister in Japan. Like, you don't know. We don't know. You don't know anything. So I think it's very. It's good to not know. It's not good to not know. It's good to say you don't know.
It's good to say you don't know. I think it's the next step after, like, fake it till you make it.
Right, yes, fake it till you make it, then you don't know. Exactly. I totally agree. Yes, I agree.
I love how you say that, of course, all of your work is feminist. Even Bluets, which may seem more detached from political matters, is a very political book, because you actually deconstruct blue, the idea of blue, the perception of blue. It's a very feminist thing to do. Actually, you kind of inject queerness in blue, because you can question everything like that. You can question gender and sexuality. This thing about perception, I think it's what Bluets is about.
Yeah, that's really nice. That's nicely put. Yeah, it's funny because, again, I was doing an interview this morning, and he kept asking me, because it was Pride Month, about like when I came out or whatever, and I was like, it's not like that for me. And I was trying to explain, but I couldn't explain, because like a book like Bluets, like the object of affection in that book is a man. That book is kind of fiercely fighting with like William Gass or some other people, who've written about blue or about color, but from a kind of they get the credit of like this detached philosophical meditation on blue, and like, so that book is definitely playing with like, well, if I come in here, if I barge in the room and with all you guys, I see that you're all talking about color over here, Goethe and Wittgenstein and William Gass and all of you, and I'll have some things to say, and like, and if I kind of perform this desire very wantonly throughout the text, what will change or what will stay the same. And I think that, I guess to me, like, that kind of activity, like you say, is more of a continuum throughout my work. It really doesn't not that queer content doesn't matter, but it really isn't. I mean, I really like what you say, because I really think it's about like a methodology more than, an identity per se, or more than like,
Yeah, questioning perception. And I think it's also very easy to link with the Argonauts, because I think perception is also what makes the Argonauts so strong. So I have to remind here that you were awarded the 2015 National Book Critics Circle Award for this book, and you changed many people's lives around the world. And many moments of the book are about the way people perceive you. For example, like you're pregnant, you give a conference about the red parts, and people are like, how can you write about violence when you're pregnant? And it's like, they see you pregnant, and so you're not authorized to talk about violence anymore. And also the same thing with Harry, who's taking testosterone and is changing too. So isn't this like question of perception like central in your feminist thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a little part in the Argonauts where I'm talking about being pregnant, and I'm talking about a very kind but kind of misguided technician who keeps like printing out pictures of my son at my weekly ultrasounds and telling me like, wow, he's really showing off his gender, or, like all these different things. And I say like, maybe a self is this constellation of projections coming at you, from outside. And I do think that is, it's not entirely how we construct ourselves, but I do think that it's more interesting to think about not like a pre-given self that you are, but to kind of, maybe I believe we have a soul that's pre-given, but a self, I don't think so.
Wow, that was beautiful. I wanted to talk, but you already talked about this. Like, I really identified the problem in your French interviews when you came here to promote the Argonauts. Like, for example, journalists persist in saying Harry is transsexual when he actually doesn't identify as such, and he always says in the book, in the Argonauts, I'm not going anywhere, which is a beautiful way to say it. But I was wondering, when you come to Europe, if you have the feelings these questions are like harder to make people like understand. And I was wondering also if you are aware, like for example, in France, lesbian couples are not allowed to have medically assisted procreation.
I didn't know that when I came with the Argonauts, and I wish I had, because
we're debating this right now.
I know. I was just reading about it this morning, and I think if I'd known that when I came, I would have been more prepared for. I was kind of taken off guard by the lines of questioning, I think, because I didn't realize that it was so controversial or unsettled here in that way. And I think I felt, I hope I didn't sound like it in my interviews, but I think I felt, defensive about my family, because it felt like the questions were kind of like,
What are you talking about?
It's kind of like, you call this a family, or why are you a family, or how do you, I don't know, just like a kind of like, in a way that I just felt like I'm a family because I'm a family. I was very confused by it, and I think also the discourse around assisted reproduction. I understand it better now. I think when I was here before, I never really thought of it as like a bioethical issue, which is how it's framed here. So people kept asking me about like cloning and like issues that seemed very far off topic, like genetically modified food. I was like I couldn't understand. I didn't understand
the link between.
I didn't understand, and now I understand because I went home and I read about things that were going on in France. I don't know. I think it's a really odd moment. There's not very much about the United States to feel proud of right now.
Yes.
But I do think that on this account, it's been recent as well, but I do think the past, decade has been, prior to Trump was a good decade for all this stuff. So I think that...
Yeah, you wrote the Argonauts during the Obama era.
I did, and it bears the marks of that time, and it bears the marks of queers worried more about assimilation than about persecution, and who knows how long that will last, or things move forward unevenly. I think it's been exciting and a little frightening to have the book travel so far. Very exciting. I'm very grateful, but I never really imagined it in so many countries. With it's in Turkey, it's in Brazil. I mean, it's all these places that are also having all kinds of gender freakouts and right-wing fascist family-oriented movement. So it's been it's I hope the book does good work. It's not why I wrote it per se, and I never imagined that kind of reach or audience. It
was just a book about your family.
Exactly.
But the fact of saying my family exists is also a very political thing to do, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it was very nice, especially in the United States, where there are a lot of families that have some externally similar features as my own, to hear from so many people who felt like they had not seen any real literary representations of their family, and that was happy making. And then, so that was, it's good.
Also, there are not many literary representation about pregnancy and giving birth. I
There
think
really
before
aren't,
writing the Argonauts, you checked out in your own shelf and you realized that the only writings about giving birth were written by men.
I know, it's very strange. I mean, it's not strange when you consider the history, right? Where to choose to be a woman writer in the public square, really not that long ago. I mean, you can look at Mary Wollstonecraft or, Mary Shelley or whatever. You can look at other people. There have been people. But at least in the United States, some of the most famous writers that we have, whether it's Emily Dickinson or Gertrude Stein, they're either famous hermits or famous lesbians at a time when you couldn't have kids or they would be taken from you or all kinds of things. And then the next wave, like Audre Lorde and Audrine Rich and queer women with children, the next wave was kind of women who'd had children in a marriage or something, and then they left the marriage and then had a new queer family with those children. But, because legally, still, whatever, 10 to 30 years out of people being able to make queer family or whatever, it's just not for a long time queer meant not procreating, because that was, either have your kids taken away from you if you were queer, or you couldn't have them in a queer couple. So that was it. I mean, I guess in France it still is like that.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
No, it's a hypocrisy because there are already many, many queer families in France.
Well, that's the interesting thing.
It's just
right?
they're not legally protected. That's the real problem.
That's the real
these
problem,
kids don't exist for law, but they exist. So we should do something quickly. But anyways.
Yeah, is that, I was reading in the news today, and it's they made their recommendation, but they're waiting to bring up the bill. Is that right? Or something like that?
The government has been saying for years that they were going to pass this law, and every time there is something more urgent to do, and it's it gives time for all the very conservative and right wing just speeches to come out in the media and be like, oh my God, the family law. Blah.
But here's the thing that's so strange about that, and we don't have to get off topic and talk about it. Here's the one thing that struck me as so strange is the law that you could use assisted reproduction if you live 2 years in a straight relationship, then the concern really isn't about the bioethics or the origin of the child. It's just about perceptions, right? So exactly. I find that very confusing.
It's incredible. And if you're a single woman, you cannot have it too. It's you can have this if you are a heterosexual woman and you're in a couple. That's so weird.
Yeah, it's very odd. I mean, it makes more sense in a way to me that you would just... If it was really a bioethical issue, that you would just say, no, we don't think that you should have medically assisted reproduction, period. So it's really odd.
No, I know. It's, France is crazy with this. So I just wanted you to talk about this concept you call matrophobia. I think it's really interesting. Mm-hmm. Could you please explain it?
Well, it just means fear of mothers, but I think the way I've probably used it in conversation or something is kind of a matrophobia in literature. And I think, when I've used the term, I've also used it to, I think I have plenty of matrophobia myself. I think most people do. I don't think you can live in this culture and not, especially if you've been told that being a mother will like eat your brain. It'll, kill your career. It will render you, seemingly insignificant in the eyes of everyone that previously met her. All those different things. I mean, obviously a lot of that's changing, but like, how wouldn't you have metrophobia, in a certain way? And then also, I think, but there's a really great book, you might know it, Jacqueline Rose. Do you know Jacqueline Rose? Yeah, that book, Mothers. Did you read it?
No, not yet, but I read about her.
I think it's very good. But her argument in that book is a little different, which is that like that mothers provoke sadism, not like phobia, but like sadism, because we put upon them this idea of unconditional love and self-sacrifice and being able to do everything for their children, and then when they can't perform the function adequately, which by definition is an unperformable function, we want to punish them, intensely. And this can happen on an individual level with your own mother. Like I was saying before, that's why you probably blame her till you're 35, because you say, I wouldn't have suffered if I'd been mothered better. So on an individual level, but it's also on a cultural level where you see, like she writes a lot about, say, the demonization of mothers, immigrant mothers coming to, say, use the British National Health Service to have children, where like they actually are performing what we are hoping, like the same way with people coming from Central America and Mexico to the United States, like they're actually trying to do in a world that makes it nearly impossible to care for your child. You're trying to do this thing, and the only way to, instead of politically making a better world for care, you demonize the mother for, how could she have put her child on that train, or how could she's a sucker off the national health system, all the same things. So I think metrophobia and metrosadism or something, they're very linked, and I think that they're worth looking at both in the culture at large and what we ask of mothers, as she says, and then also what we ask of our own mothers and ourselves. Yeah,
it reminds me also when there is delinquents, you always like
where
blame the
their
mothers.
mothers.
Yeah, then they don't educate them well.
Yeah, when people were gay, it used to be like, what did the mom do?
Of course.
So yeah, I think that there's a real. I mean, in being a mother, I think it's such a reckoning with finitude, like how much you can do, and I think you have this fantasy about your capacity to protect, and then and it's all out. Most of it exceeds your control, and I think that can be very self-punishing as well, because it can just feel, it can feel desperate. So I think there's a lot to. But the good news is that reckoning with that is in some ways a way of reckoning with the human condition, because we reckon with that we cannot control everything, and we cannot protect each other from suffering, ourselves or people we love, and that there might be a mode of thinking about accompanying each other and helping when we can, that's better than these kind of all-powerful figures that we invest in and then despise.
Yeah. Maggie Nelson, how do you get along with your uterus?
Do I get along with my uterus?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
It's a question I ask every woman who comes here.
How do I get along with it? Oh, I don't know. Okay. I mean, it's quite out of sight. It's quite out of sight. I'm very grateful to my uterus for the things that it's done. I think I'm fine to have it. I'm fine to have it shut down, and I'm very much looking forward as like a person, I guess, in the perimenopause years. I'm very much looking forward to like the other side of all that, So
you're done with your uterus.
Done with my uterus, and but I'm not. I mean, I am and I'm not, because it continues to make all kinds of amazing hormones that make life and mood possible. What do people say usually when you ask?
It's very funny how different the answers can be to this question.
Yeah, it's funny.
Sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's motherhood, sometimes it's like, stop telling me I should make kids, or it's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, the cool thing about a uterus, which I didn't know before I went into labor, literally like my first contraction, I was like, oh, this is what a uterus is that like it I thought childbirth hurt like down there, like I thought it was like a vaginal enterprise, but it's not. Like, your uterus expands to be like all the way up in the top, underneath your rib cage, and it's a amazingly expansive
device.
I reread the Argonauts this weekend, and I wept intensely during the last 30 pages.
Wow.
It happened to me the first time I read it some years ago, and it happened to me again. It's so beautiful.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank
your
you.
birth and the death of Harry's mom at the same time. It's like, okay, incredible. One last question.
Yeah.
What does la poudre mean to you, the powder? What do you think about when I tell you the powder?
Just anything about the powder? We have no idea what you're talking about.
It's the name of the show.
Oh, it's the name of the show.
Yes.
Say it again.
La poudre, which means the powder in French.
Powder.
Mm-hmm. Powder.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I mean, it sounds magic, like magic powder, and it also sounds like, you want to get oil off your face.
Thank you.
What
so
is
much.
it?
It's just whatever you want it to be.
Whatever you want to be. Okay, great. Yeah,
Thank you so much,
Thank
Maggie
you.
Nelson.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Nouvelles Écoutes is the executive producer of La Poudre, a podcast produced by Aurore Meyer-Mailleux and Marion Emery, prepared and recorded by Gaia Marty. The English dubbing is made by Charles de Cilia and mixed by Marion Emery. Thank you to Perrine Malange for the help in making this recording happen.